Hello from Washington, D.C. This is Al Jazeera and this is America. And a lot of questions in America right now. Questions for President Trump about the end game in this conflict. What does it look like? Does it keep on changing? But also questions about questions not being asked by Congress, not being asked by America's traditional allies. We're going to be looking at that more in detail in a few minutes. But first, Anna Burns-Francis.
Thanks, Phil. In a moment, we'll be joined by our colleague Mike Hanna, who is at the White House for us today. But first, the war in Iran is now into its third week, and many are asking why. Why is the United States in a war with Iran? And more importantly, how will it get out of a war with Iran? Every day this goes on, Americans loath to be caught in another two-decade conflict are asking if there's a plan for an exit or an escalation. America launched its assault on Iran in the midst of protracted diplomatic talks. The reasons why included preventing the development of nuclear weapons, a call for regime change after recent civil unrest, and eliminating an imminent threat to the United States. The messaging has been shifting and contradictory. Trump has said the war will be over when he feels it in his bones. Anytime I want it to end, he said on March 11, it will end. And just a couple of days ago, the president said the war was over.
We've won. Let me tell you, we've won. You know, you never like to say too early you won. We won. We won the bet. In the first hour, it was over.
Now, clearly, the war is not over. But the president continues to make statements about when and how it will be. Let's go now to the White House, where Mike Hanna is standing by. And Mike, the president has spoken in just the last couple of hours, again saying that the operation in Iran is just a military one and that it is mostly over. But is he calling it an end to this conflict?
Well, it's not clear exactly what he is calling it because he sent out different messages at different times, as have members of his administration. The time frame for this war has ranged from 3 or 4 days at the beginning to 4 weeks or more from other administration officials. So there's no clarity, and there is no clarity as to exactly what the mission objective is. And unless this is understood, it's very difficult to see how the US can create an off-ramp to start backing away from this conflict. Well, let's just try and sort out this apparent confusion.
Are you ready to officially declare victory?
How long is a piece of string? This question perhaps an answer to whether there's a time frame in this war. Last week, the president appeared to be heralding the beginning of the end.
Every place we've gone, we've had tremendous success. But while we're doing all of these things, we're achieving major strides toward completing our military objective. And some people could say they're pretty well complete.
The president was asked to clarify whether it was complete or whether, as his defense secretary said, it's just the beginning.
I think you could say it both. It's the beginning. It's the beginning of building a new country.
That's a phrase that set alarm bells ringing in Congress. Even Trump supporters like House Speaker Mike Johnson and many of his fellow Republicans insisted the U.S. should not get involved in nation building in Iran.
That is something that history should have made clear. Attempts at nation building ended badly in Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Wars that President Trump said should never have been launched, while pledging that he would never put U.S. lives at risk in other countries.
It is still the case that the Trump administration cannot explain the reasons that we entered this war, the goals we're trying to accomplish, and the methods for doing that.
And with no clear mission goal, premature claims of mission accomplished may once again be empty words. Mike Hanna, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Well, both the White House and the Pentagon say President Trump's reasons for going to war with Iran were clear and obvious. But were they? Let's head to Phil Lavelle in the newsroom to see how the US media is interpreting it.
Yeah, a lot of coverage in the press and on TV about how the rhetoric appears to be contradictory. So let's take a look at how Axios is reporting this. Axios is really not pulling any punches here. Look at this headline. Trump's Iran war messaging is all over the map, and it leans into that shifting narrative. It says the administration claims its goals of knocking out Iran's nuclear capabilities, ending its support for terrorism, and defeating its navy are clear. But Trump's messaging is more fluid. Right, let's go to the Washington Post next, and it leans into that endgame scenario, or lack of it. Its headline here: Trump pursues Iranian decapitation without a plan for what comes next. And it delivers a scathing assessment. Look at this: regime change by jazz improvisation. Remember, regime change, 2 words we heard a lot at the beginning, and it goes on. Sadly, it is the most accurate description of the scattered, shifting, and uncertain approach that emanates from Washington these days. But let's move over to TV. This is PBS, and it was asking what went through Donald Trump's mind, what went through Pete Hegseth's mind. Here's how they covered it on the NewsHour.
Every intelligence agency on earth seems to have concluded that the odds of regime change, the odds that the Iranian people have any opportunity to rise up anytime soon, are very unlikely. And so that means we're in a war of containment. It looks a little more like the Cold War, where whatever happens in this military kinetic phase, there's going to be a long period we're going to have to contain Iran.
Right, next up, we're going to go to Fox News. This is Brian Kilmeade. He's one of Fox's big hosts. Now, remember at the start of this, Donald Trump was urging Iranians to take back control of their country. He said it might be their only chance in a generation. The president was talking to Kilmeade about why he thinks it is still possible. Take a listen.
That it'll happen, but it probably will be maybe not immediately. Who's going to do that? They literally have people in the streets with machine guns, machine gunning people down if they want to protest, okay?
And finally, the Los Angeles Times. It says Trump may not know what he wants or why he started this war. And it goes even further. It asks, is there a way out of this conflict? And its final assessment, here we go. Trump remains confident of victory. It would be nice if he clarified what victory means. And remember, the president has talked about how he feels this war is very much complete, but the bombs are still falling, and there are so many questions about the end game and what that looks like.
Plenty of confusion then, at least amongst media, about the rationale for the war. Here to hopefully make some sense of it is Jason Campbell, a former Pentagon official, now with the Middle East Institute, and Charles Kupchan from the Council of Foreign Relations. He used to advise President Obama on the National Security Council. Jason, I'll start with you. How does Donald Trump's messaging confuse any path people may see toward the end of the war?
Well, I think in the mixed messaging is trying to allow him maximum flexibility, but it's also causing confusion because the stated goals are military, but there are inherent political desires there that aren't being explicitly stated, but certainly insinuated over and over again.
Yeah, Charles, you might have an opinion on whether that is useful or not, that mixed messaging, but I'm wondering if there has been an off-ramp so far, and I speak to perhaps the death of Iran's supreme leader, and again, reports out of Israel most recently that the chief security officer, Ali Larijani, has been killed. Are those useful paths for Donald Trump to claim a win and exit this conflict?
Well, the problem is, it takes 2 to tango, it takes 2 to step back. And so Trump can't unilaterally declare victory and walk away because he needs to get the straits open. He needs the Iranians to stop firing missiles at American partners in the Gulf. And so I do think that one key issue right now is, when will the Iranians be ready to stop? How much more punishment are they going to take? And I do think they're both edging toward that off-ramp. We're not there yet. Let's keep a close eye on when the Iranians are ready to seriously talk about stopping this war.
I wanted to ask you about this because it is becoming a case of endurance, isn't it? And Iran has given every indication that not only will it have a say in what becomes the end of the war, but at this stage, it's prepared to keep going indefinitely.
You know, there is an asymmetrical element to this, in that the Americans are pounding away at the missile launch sites, the drone factories, the command and control centers. But the Iranians have an ace, right? And that is, this is a very narrow strait. It's shallow. You can't start an escort mission while this war is going on. And so I do think that the Iranians have the somewhat, not all the leverage, but the key here is to continue to put the pressure on the regime so that they're ready to say, we've had enough, at the same time that Trump says, we've had enough.
They've got enough leverage, right, in the meantime. Jason, I'll bring you in here because surely all of the things that we're discussing are also being discussed at other, much higher levels, certainly amongst President Trump and his advisors. We have seen the boss of America's counterterrorism centre today, Joe Kent, has resigned. He's quit in protest at where things are going. What is happening inside those briefings? What are those discussions that military and administration bosses will be having with the president about coming to an end?
Well, it appears right now that part of the issue is that most of these discussions center around military solutions. That remains the top of Trump's rhetoric. He's trying now to build coalitions of really anyone who will offer some sort of assistance to effectively retake the Strait of Hormuz, however that might play out. And there's not a lot of discussion now of what are the political ramifications, either of moving forward with proposing talks or what some sort of a ceasefire scenario might look like.
But politically, it has to look like a win, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And right now, it's difficult to see how they get there as long as Iran is able to control the Strait of Hormuz.
It would seem that based on air power alone, as it largely is at the moment, this is not necessarily a conflict that militarily is going to achieve the objectives that we keep hearing about?
I think that's absolutely the case. If they've already decapitated the regime, they're still going after high-profile targets. That absolutely does degrade their ability to lead and govern, but it has not toppled the regime and is unlikely to just with air power.
Yeah. We have seen President Trump's cabinet is sticking with the line that he is ultimately the one who decides how the war proceeds and what those objectives are. Here's what the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth had to say just a few days ago.
We define success, again, 13 days in, by reaching the military objectives that we've laid out. Launchers, missile launchers, defense industrial base, their Navy, the ability to project power in the naval sense, leading toward denying them to get a nuclear weapon. And we've got internal metrics that look at that we represent to the president, who then can decide how long he'd like to continue in pursuit of those military objectives. So that hasn't changed.
All right, Charles, quickfire here. Will the United States achieve a regime change or neutralising any nuclear capability here?
One of the advantages of mixed messaging is you can change the narrative as you go along, and that's exactly what's happening. I think for now, regime change is off the table, and Trump will declare victory when he thinks he's degraded the missile capability, when he's taken out the ability of Iran to enrich uranium, which is pretty much already done, and when he convinces the Iranians to stop supporting proxies.
Right. There will be a great number of people asking, though, how did you get into a war without at least a clear plan of how you might get out of the war? How did this get into this situation?
You know, I don't think the Trump administration did its homework. I think they looked at what happened in Venezuela. They looked at the strikes that had been taken in Iran last year, other surgical strikes in Iraq, in Syria, and Yemen, and they thought that they could do this cleanly and surgically. And that didn't happen. The Iranian regime has shown remarkable resilience. They were more ready for this war than the United States was. And that's why I think now Trump is recalibrating and saying we're about to end this war. I think we are, but he needs to convince the Iranians to play along.
Can we pick up on that point about Iran being ready for this war? There's been a lot of commentary about people saying that Iran has prepared for this moment. And President Trump was asked specifically about the briefings he had, whether anyone anticipated and warned him that Iran would retaliate in this way. He said nobody had seen this coming. What do you make of that comment, Jason?
I think it's a little disingenuous, having sat in on a number of war games, tabletop exercises over the years. You know, when you look at, again, Iran is a master of asymmetric warfare. The Strait of Hormuz is, for them, a geographic gift that they can use in asymmetric ways, as we're seeing. They've got a range of missiles and drones that can reach throughout the region, and a whole lot of U.S. interests based in there that they've struck, as I think anyone would have rightfully expected.
Yeah. Charles, you've just mentioned just before that regime change looks like it's going to be off the table. So what then would Iran look like, or what would an Iran look like that was acceptable to President Trump to call an end to this?
Yeah, I think regime change for now is off the table. I think there was a flirtation with arming the Kurds and trying to break up the country. I don't think that's going to happen. You know, 60% Persian, another 20% Azeri. The Azeris are very close to the Persians. That looks to me like a winning coalition. I think the key question is, do we end up with the Islamic Republic that was there before, controlled by hardliners, or do we end up with the Islamic Republic 2.0, more moderate, less ideological, willing to work with the United States on creating some sort of stable status quo. Those are the two options.
Your two options might dictate your answer to my next question as we wrap things up here. When do you see an end to the war, Charles? Give me a timeline that you have in your mind.
I think we're probably looking at another couple of weeks before oil prices are so high, Iran has been hit so much that they're ready to say, hey, let's call it quits.
Jason, any predictions from you?
I think I'm in general agreement. I think the strategic loss for the U.S. is to have the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz remaining largely in the hands of Iran in terms of who can come in and out. That has to be resolved.
Jason Campbell, former Pentagon official with the Middle East Institute, and Charles Kupchan from the Council of Foreign Relations. Thank you both so much.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Well, that ever-moving narrative about objectives and endgame for the United States and Iran has also played out online. Alex Baird has been following the developments on social media.
Well, as you've heard throughout the show, Trump's messaging on the war with Iran has been a moving target. His hardline stance 1 week in, unconditional surrender, while saying he wanted to make Iran great again. A week later, he was claiming on Truth Social to have won the war. The United States of America has beaten and completely decimated Iran, both militarily, economically, and in every other way. But did the White House get that memo? Just a couple of days later, it pushed this video. One mission, clear objectives, stopping Iran from having nuclear weapons. The war clearly still in play. And that ever-evolving narrative around the end game has gone down like lead, with conservative podcaster Tucker Carlson, who says he's never met anybody who has laid out a logical case for this war and how it will benefit the states. That line has been seized on by Democrats. California Governor Gavin Newsom saying there is no real endgame in sight, despite surging gas prices and the extended range of Iranian attacks. And for Democratic Senator Chris Murphy, if there's no endgame, and if chaos in the region could go on indefinitely, there's one question. What's next?
Well, that's all for now from Washington, D.C. On This Is America, we'll keep following the decisions that shape the U.S. and influence the world. And now, back to Al Jazeera's global headquarters in Doha.